Hello and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, my name's Hannah and I make lots of videos exposing MLM companies. Like over 200 videos at this point. There is a huge playlist on my channel that you can binge through if you're interested in that. And one of my favorite series on my channel is the MLM Horror Stories series, which is what I have for you today. These are people's personal experiences that they've had with MLM companies. They write out their story, they send them to me, and I read them here for a video. I'm always accepting submissions, so if you have your own, go ahead and check out the description box below for instructions on how to send that to me. And this is the first horror story video of the new year. I'm so excited. And speaking of New Year's, I've had New Year's resolutions on the brain a lot lately. Something I'm focusing on for myself in 2024 is my relationship with my husband, which is why I'm so excited to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Paired. Paired is a relationship care app that offers daily couple questions, relationship games, quizzes, exercises, and expert video guidance on all relationship subjects, with a mission to improve the happiness of couples in relationships. My husband and I have been using the Paired app for years, long before I ever worked with them as a sponsor, and we've loved it. 2023 was the year we became parents, and while it's been the greatest experience of our lives so far, it also just kind of naturally means that there's less time for us as a couple. A lot of times we find ourselves primarily talking about the baby and focusing on taking care of her, as we should. That's our job. But our relationship is important too, and the more connected we are, the better parents we can be. And what makes the Paired app so great is that their whole goal is to prompt fun, meaningful conversations with your partner. We found that the kinds of topics are so broad and unique that it gets us talking about things we probably otherwise wouldn't, if I'm being honest. The topics range from fun and lighthearted and silly to things that are a little bit spicy to things that are really deep and emotional and important to talk about. We recently played a game together where we answer a few questions about our goals for the new year, and it's fun because you give your own answers, but then you have to try and guess your partner's answers, and whoever gets the most correct answers wins. We love that you always have to answer for yourself first before you can unlock what your partner has responded. The Paired app is the ultimate relationship companion. It is great for new couples who are just learning about each other, or for couples who've been together a long time but they're looking to connect on a deeper level. If you would like to maintain and deepen connection with your partner in the new year, you can click my link in the description box below, and this is going to give you a 7-day free trial plus 25% off Paired Premium. Thank you to the Paired app for your continued support of the channel. Now let's read some horror stories. This story says, "Hi Hannah and Zeke and Cooper. My name is blank, please keep me anonymous, and I had a pretty scary experience with a random MLM hunt at the mall a few months ago, who told me she could cure my disabilities and my service dog could be, quote, freed. I was 15, I'm 16 now, and I was sitting in the mall food court alone since my friend who I was just with had left, and I was waiting for my dad to be done in a store before we could leave. I was just sitting there minding my own business when an older woman came up to me and said, 'I like your dog,' referring to my service dog sleeping under the table. This happens a lot as a service dog handler, so I just said thank you and assumed that would be the end of it. However, she wouldn't stop talking. I started to feel pretty uncomfortable because she was asking personal questions about my disability and dog to the point where it was extremely invasive. I was just giving one-word vague answers, trying to show her that I clearly wasn't interested, but she either didn't get the hint or she just didn't care. After probably 2 minutes of talking, she said, 'Can I sit here?' And before I had a chance to answer, she pulled the chair next to me out and sat down. This made me extremely uncomfortable and was crossing many boundaries. I'm a very anxious person and also an avid true crime watcher, so my mind was racing with all the possibilities of what was going to happen to me. She then opened her bag and put a bunch of essential oils on the table. I was extremely confused. I had no knowledge of MLMs at the time and just wanted to get out of there, but my dad was still nowhere in sight. She started to ask me about my thoughts and experiences with essential oils. My parents are both in the science and medicine fields of work, so we've never relied on oils to be remedies or anything like that. So I told her, I've never used them before, but I'm not really interested. Thanks though. She would not take no for an answer and insisted that these random oils could cure my disability. I hadn't even told her what it was. And that once I was cured, my service dog could be freed. My dog lives an amazing life and loves working. She isn't some enslaved, miserable dog like this lady was trying to accuse me of. I got pretty offended by this because essential oils have no scientific evidence to cure anything at all, and to act like I force my service dog to do something she hates and that she needs to be freed from working is just so ridiculous. Also, if you haven't guessed by now, the brand she was promoting was Young Living, and she was trying to get me to buy a bunch of her oils. Luckily, my dad came before things got out of hand and flat out told her that we are in no way interested in her oils and that we needed to go to get to an appointment. This part was a lie to leave ASAP. How can someone see a 15-year-old disabled girl with a service dog sitting alone in the mall and think, wow, she would be great to sell my pitch to? It honestly just baffles me. I hate that these people prey on vulnerable individuals like myself just for their own financial gain, which is why I'm so glad you're spreading awareness with your content. Thank you for reading my story. I'm glad that I didn't get kidnapped, but I'm not sure experiencing ableism by an MLM hun was that much better. I've also attached a picture of my 2 cats because even though I have a service dog, I am 100% a cat person. Thank you for doing that. I'll put those pictures on the screen here. And I'm so happy to be hearing from somebody that's 16 years old. You're still in high school. That's amazing because a demographic of people that are often targeted and preyed upon and swept away into an MLM scheme is right after they graduate high school as soon as they turn 18. And I think that's for various reasons, but one of them being that 18-year-olds don't know what MLMs are typically. I know I didn't. And it's promoted as this great, desirable way to be your own boss and to be a business owner. And for some people who might not be on the college route, they might see that as a great other opportunity to pursue. So anyway, the point of me saying that is that I'm really excited to hear stories from teenagers who are already aware of MLMs. Whether or not that's because of my videos or my content, I don't know, but just in general, I think the message of anti-MLM is becoming wider spread these days. And it's so encouraging for me to see younger and younger people becoming aware of this information before they fall victim to it. And I completely agree with you. Who in their right mind sees a teenager with a service dog alone in a public place and thinks, aha, perfect target. I'm going to walk right over there, sit myself down and pitch her. To be fair, maybe she didn't know you were a teenager or a minor. You're not even old enough to sign up for Young Living anyway. You have to be 18. So my assumption is that if she did know you were underage, that she wouldn't have wasted her time because you can't sign up anyway. But still, it's like she saw your service dog and she used that as her in. The first thing she said to you is, I like your dog, trying to strike up a conversation maybe about the dog or about your disabilities or the reason that you need this dog. And it's like she's kind of linking these things together in her mind as the way to pitch the oils as the cure for the disability and the reason that you might not need the dog in the future. Completely invasive, completely inappropriate, so downright rude. I have never thought to myself, seeing a service dog in public, to go up to that person and be like, what's wrong with you? Why do you need a service dog? It's none of your business whatsoever. That's just a disrespectful thing to do to somebody. And so the fact that she's doing that to try and make a sale or to pitch you these oils is ridiculous. And the fact that she crossed your boundaries and she continued to push you further when you clearly weren't interested in that conversation and you weren't trying to answer her questions. And she's invading your personal space too. It's things like this where I just have to wonder, how do they think that's going to work? If you're making somebody visibly uncomfortable, what makes you think that they're going to be receptive to your pitch? I talked about this in a recent horror stories video too, when somebody was pitching Herbalife, I believe, and the way they made their in was like, you look like you need to lose weight. I have the product for you. Like, it's so rude. That's not a good strategy. I can't believe people think that's going to work for them. And in this case, she's not just disrespecting you, she's disrespecting your dog and making all kinds of assumptions about why you might need a service dog or how the dog is being treated, or alluding to the fact that her oils are the simple quick fix to whatever you're dealing with. The whole thing is just an unkind human interaction, and it's giving off a vibe of desperation on her part. She's toting around this bag of essential oils in a mall and then targeting people who look like they might be in some kind of vulnerable position based on her assumptions. This really just speaks to the fact that it is so hard for people in MLMs to make sales, that they are looking for an opportunity in anybody, anywhere they go. And I'm so sorry that this particular person saw you as their target that day, but I appreciate you writing in your story. This one says, hi Hannah, I've been an avid follower of your channel for some time now and love your content. I've been debating whether or not to share my experience because in comparison to some of the stories I've come across, mine don't really seem very bad. After watching a few dozen of your stories, I haven't really heard a story like mine, so I figured writing in would give another viewpoint. I wouldn't necessarily call my story a horror story. This is the story of the 2 weeks I was in an MLM. About 7 years ago, my husband passed away unexpectedly, leaving me a 24-year-old widow with an 18-month-old son. My goodness, I'm so sorry. At that time, I was a stay-at-home mom with no source of income. Fortunately, through life insurance and the support of my family and community around me, I was able to afford to stay home with my son, still make ends meet, and not stress too much financially for a few months. However, I knew this was not a sustainable way to live. I needed a job that would allow me to be there for my son while also providing for us. Despite having family willing to help, I'm an independent person and I couldn't imagine relying on others for an extended period of time. I had several friends who were in MLMs at the time, but I never really put a whole lot of thought into them. I had bought a few items here and there to support my friends, but that was the extent of it. I'm not a salesperson. I had major social anxiety at the time, and everyone I talked to knew that, so nobody ever pressured me into joining one. However, one of my friends at the time invited me to a charity event and penny auction that she was going to be at for her son's school, so I came to try to support her. Please pardon Zeke making himself known in the background. Looking back, I believe most of the vendors there were MLMs. I just didn't realize it at the time. During the event, I struck up a conversation with somebody representing Wild Tree, a company that specializes in gluten-free, allergy-sensitive organic seasonings aimed at promoting healthier eating. As our conversation progressed, we discussed various topics, not just business-related matters, and somehow I found myself agreeing to host a party for her. Okay, so I've never heard of Wild Tree before, and in preparing for this video, I saw the name in this story, so I Googled it. And to be fair, I didn't dig too far into it, but what I could gather is that this did used to be an MLM several years ago during the time period you're talking about here, but it's not an MLM anymore. They have a website, you can buy the products on there, but there is nothing on that website that has anything to do with an opportunity or an ambassador program. There's no compensation plan, there's nothing like that. And I found an article from 2019 that says 23-year-old MLM company Wild Tree out of business. But here in 2024, they still have a website, you can still buy the products. So I think somewhere along the line, they used to be an MLM company and then they dissolved that program and now they're just doing retail sales. So kind of interesting. I've only been doing this content for a couple years. I've never heard of Wild Tree, which I guess would make sense because they haven't been an MLM within the last couple years. And I feel like that's kind of a nice update to be able to give the company, that you had an experience with them as an MLM previously, but they're not anymore. I just wanted to throw that in there because I think that's kind of some good news that comes out of this. She provided me with a shopping list for groceries to use at the party for product sampling, which cost me around $40. She arrived about a half an hour before the party to set everything up while I chatted with her and greeted guests as they arrived. Around 8 people attended the party, which made my small kitchen feel cramped, so we moved to the living room. We sampled the food, engaged in conversation, and I listened to her presentation on the horrors that go into the food we buy from the grocery store, complete with visual aids. At the end of it all, I had earned about $150 to $200 in hostess rewards. Quote, enough for your own starter kit with even a little extra to spare. It was the easiest money I had ever made. I got to enjoy food, spend some time with friends, and make money, all while having my 22-month-old son by my hip. Could I do this? Could I be a supermom who could do it all? Could I run my own business and be able to stay home with my son at the same time? Spoiler alert, no, I couldn't. A week later, my starter kit arrived and I was excited to begin working on my business. The kit contained a selection of their top-selling products, about 5 or 6 parties worth of samples, and paper order forms, several hundred catalogs showcasing the latest sales, recipe cards, and of course, the visual aids. Since I had recently hosted a party, I decided to ask my friend to host one for me, sparing my friends and family from my constant sales pitches. Fortunately, I belong to a tight-knit church community, making it easy to find somebody willing to host. Within days of receiving my kit, I had a party booked and I was ready to start selling over the weekend. The party was relatively small with only about 4 people, but each person bought something, which should have earned the hostess around $40 in free products by my calculations. She was thrilled and selected the products that she wanted me to order for her. As I didn't have a laptop at the time, I had to record everything manually during the party and then enter the orders online once I returned home. However, when I entered in all the orders, the website indicated that my hostess was still $50 in sales short of receiving her rewards. How could that be? I looked at my catalogs where it contained the hostess rewards and I redid my math. I should have been correct. After reaching out to my upline and conducting some basic research, I discovered that the company had altered the criteria for hostess rewards between the time I had received my starter kit and the party I hosted. Since I was so new to the company, I hadn't even thought about that being a possibility. So all of this is happening within the span of a couple weeks, right? It's like you have that first party and then you join the company and buy your starter kit and then you're having this second party and somewhere along the lines, they change all the criteria. And what's printed in the catalogs you got with your starter kit is not accurate information anymore, even though that was the case like a week ago. I can't blame you at all for just assuming that the information in the catalog would be correct, right? It should be correct, but instead, because it's not your business and it's not your company, someone in the higher ups changed the criteria. And it sounds like they didn't even notify you that it was being changed either. This goes to show that it's not your own company and that things can be switched up on you on a moment's notice. I think people who join an MLM like to believe that it is their own business and that they are in control of their own success, but a lot of these decisions are not up to them. The company could choose to change the products, the prices, the formulations, whether or not things go on sale, the compensation plan requirements, the party hosting rewards. None of that is up to you because it's not your business, even though you've been led to believe it is. I had to call my hostess and tell her the bad news. After talking to her, I felt so bad that I ended up ordering $50 in products under her party so that she wouldn't walk away empty-handed, but her hostess rewards still weren't much. Not only had they raised the quota to earn the rewards, they also lowered the amount of rewards you got once you started earning them. That just didn't sit right with me. Why would you be taking away incentives to host a party if that was how the company made a profit? It seemed so unfair. That's when it hit me. This wasn't my own business. Yes, exactly. I had no control over pricing, hostess benefits, or even the products I sold. Everything was dictated by someone else. Yes, you're completely correct. I should have just read ahead in your story. Since this happened so long ago, and while I can't recall if I formally canceled my business with the company, I do remember contacting my upline to express that this venture wasn't right for me. Our conversation lasted 2 hours, during which she tried to talk me into speaking with her own upline as her efforts to convince me to stay hadn't been successful. Even though I told her no, I didn't want to talk to someone else, I'm pretty sure she was texting her upline during our conversation, getting help with rebuttals as to my reasons on why I was quitting, because I got a lot of hold on a second requests during that call. Thankfully, her efforts were unsuccessful and she never brought up her business to me again. Since then, I've done a ton of research on MLMs and their operations. A few years ago, when I returned to school, I even wrote an ethics paper about the industry as a whole. I received an A on it, if you're curious. I'm now remarried to an amazing man and happily working a dreaded desk job and enjoying life MLM and guilt-free. Thanks for reading my story. Keep up the good work. I think the biggest lesson from your story is that it's not your own business, right? I know that, you mentioned that. And although I don't think it's fair or right that the company switched things up on you like that, I am somewhat happy about the timing of it, that this happened like first thing after you got your starter kit. And so it was made clear to you very early on that this is not your own business. And the unstable nature of it was kind of revealed to you really quickly. And this entire story spanned 2 weeks and that's it. And you got to leave this in your past and move on. That's fantastic. I love to hear that. Especially considering what we know now today in 2024, when you look up Wild Tree, it doesn't look like they're an MLM anymore. Imagine if you did stick with the company and then one day they announce somehow, oh, just kidding, we're dissolving the MLM side of our company and we're just going to move to online retail sales instead. Too bad, so sad, you're out of luck, find something else to go do. That's awful. That's got to be the biggest gut punch. And truthfully, to anybody who is in an MLM today, this is something you should be worried about. I hate to say it, but this does happen more often than you think, that your company is either found to be a pyramid scheme, or they decide to restructure on their own, or they eliminate the MLM side of it completely. And they have the power to do that because they don't owe anything to you. You're not the owner. You have no stake in the company whatsoever. You're just a salesperson, and they could drop you at a moment's notice. And that is so sickening to think about. So maybe it's some kind of blessing in disguise, actually, that you realize so quickly that this is not your own business. Because if you had stuck with it within like a year or two, they would have been shutting down anyway. So it's a good thing you realized that when you did. I guess that is the silver lining to your story. So thanks for sending it in. This story says, hello Hannah, I'm sending what I think may be one of the craziest MLM stories. Growing up, I always knew my dad was in sales, and I was never fully aware of what exactly he did for work. I just remember we would have a few years with an abundance of income and then years of barely scraping by. He would change jobs quite often and have people coming in and out of our lives. It wasn't until recently when I started watching MLM content that I realized that he was wrapped up in almost every scam imaginable and actually started his own MLM companies that were later shut down by the government. I will start at the beginning. Please do. There's a lot to cover here, I think. My dad was the top seller for 6 years running in Canada for none other than Kirby Vacuums. He was a young guy, maybe 21, 22 when he started. He worked out of an office and recruited everyone in our family to go door to door selling with him. He would put out ads in the papers, hire vans, use extremely deceptive tactics to get people to work for him. In retrospect, he was really smart about it. He made a professional storefront. He had long-term family employees to make it look legit. He got awards, trips, everything that someone at the top would have. To this day, whenever we drive around southern Ontario, he will say, knocked all these houses, or I've knocked every house in this town. I didn't know that meant that he was going house to pressure unsuspecting people into buying overpriced trash. I'm not sure when exactly he left Kirby, but my next memory is him selling HVAC and hot water tanks. If you live in Ontario, you're probably familiar with the extremely aggressive people who fashion themselves as electrical company workers. They would lie to get into your house and manipulate you into signing multi-year contracts for new equipment. It was so bad that the Canadian government banned door-to-door sales and put out a public advisory that it was a massive scam and to seek lawyers if you had fallen for it. Well, that lovely scam was started by none other than my father. Oh my goodness, so he was like really deep into the MLM scam scene in Ontario, apparently. He started by selling HVAC and water tanks for a legitimate company. He figured out the system and created his own MLM. He recruited a few people who recruited others, and like Kirby, they would go out in vans and go door to door. They would have clipboards, uniforms, name tags, everything to make them look professional. Once inside your house, they would subject people to hours-long sales pitches. In a couple of years, there were upwards of 2,000 people working for him, and he retired and made money off of his downline. He was making a fortune while the new recruits were making pennies off of their sales. While there was no sign-up fee, there was no hourly wage. Everything was commission, and you made more on recruitment of more salespeople. Eventually, they were forced to shut down, and we lost our house because my dad also decided that taxes were something that didn't apply to him. Great. I feel horrible for the people who got duped into signing 5 to 7 year contracts for hot water tanks that have no warranty or maintenance and no escape. After a couple years on the down and outs, my dad came home super excited about his new job. It had an hourly wage and a commission with no caps. We were happy that he had found something until we found out that it was selling timeshares. He excelled at it. His bullying and aggressive approach made him difficult to say no to. He was at the top, winning awards, free Vegas trips, and vehicles. He finally burnt out after 8 years or so and has happily left sales to go into construction, as he says that he can't stand having to talk to people anymore, which I find a bit ironic. The funny thing is that my dad is one of the most caring, loving, and supportive people I've ever met. This guy is literally on an organ transplant list for total strangers if there was a potential match. He has many friends, great relationships with everyone in our family. He's the dorky dad that will FaceTime me with an up-the-nose angle just to say he hopes I have a good day. It's been very difficult for me the past few months learning about what he did for work because it goes against everything I thought about him. I keep trying to rationalize it and say that he did it to support his family and because it was the only thing he ever knew, but I'm not sure I believe it. I've never brought any of this up to him as I don't think I'm ready for that conversation. I do know that people involved in these types of businesses can't only be characterized by their involvement. Many of them are wonderful people. There are friends, siblings, parents, the people we love who fell into an unfortunate situation. I think it's important to remember that before branding them all as brainwashed and predatory. We can only hope that they stop drinking the Kool-Aid one day and are able to get out like my dad, even if it takes 35 plus years. Thank you so much for reading my story. I know it's a long one. I think that your dad is one of those rare cases where he does make an entire career out of being in an MLM. Maybe not the same company, but kind of hopping through different companies and opportunities within the industry. And when one of these opportunities dries up, it's easy to just hop to the next one, especially because it sounds like your dad is a really charismatic guy who's good at talking to people and convincing people to buy whatever he's selling. So he's found great success doing that. And so if you're feeling successful and like that's what you're meant to be doing, then I can understand why you would just continue to do that. Although having your companies being shut down by the government and losing your house to things like this, those are some significant red flags that I would want to pay attention to. I mean, yeah, I guess the bright side of your story is that eventually, one day, he did get out of this industry, and that's great. And I also like the final paragraph of your story where we do remind people that not every person who gets involved with an MLM is a bad person. And we can't lump everyone together and brand them, as you said, as brainwashed and predatory. There's many reasons why people in MLMs do the things they do. And who knows, for your dad in his case, maybe he got into this when he was young, he didn't know that it was bad, he was really good at it, and so he stuck with it because that's how he provided for his family. I think on some level we can all understand that. It's pretty cool to hear that the Canadian government banned door-to-door sales. That's actually awesome. I wish they would do something like that in my area. I swear it seems like every week there's someone new at our door selling something, not necessarily an MLM or a scam, but it does just get really old. It's exhausting. Maybe that is a silver lining to your story, that because of your dad's involvement with these things, eventually that led to the Canadian government banning door-to-door sales and putting out a public advisory that they were a massive scam. I'm just really intrigued by your story. To be somebody so close to a person like your dad who had his hand in so many MLM and scammy situations while also being anti-MLM and having the perspective that these things are really harmful has got to be a really difficult place for you to be. I appreciate stories that are from a unique perspective like yours, so thanks for sharing it with us. This one says, "Hi Hannah, I love your videos. If you choose to use this story, I would appreciate it if you would keep me anonymous. I live in Utah, which is the MLM hub of the world. MLMs pervade everything. doTERRA sponsors Utah Valley University's soccer stadium. Young Living sponsored a 10K that I ran a year ago, and it seems that everyone is shilling something. Thankfully, I've been rather vocal about MLM since learning about their unethical tactics, and most of the Huns on social media have unfriended me. I thought I was safe. 2 of my kids attend the local elementary school where I live. One day they brought home information about the school's yearly fundraiser. No big deal, schools do this sort of thing all the time. But imagine my surprise when I saw that the fundraiser was for Pampered Chef. A local Hun had literally convinced the school to use the entire student body to shill her products. Not only that, the Hun required students to calculate tax and shipping costs for every purchase. This is a K-6 school. The vast majority of the student body are too young to know how to do this. The goods would be delivered to the school, and the students were then required to deliver the products to the customers. The school earned pennies on the dollar while the Hun received contact information for every customer. I wonder how many "Hey Hun" messages kind aunties and grannies received after they bought a spatula just to support their student. I wish I could say that I went full Karen and demanded that the fundraiser end, educated the staff about MLMs, and fought the school board to create policies banning MLMs at our school, but I don't have the courage. Instead, I took the opportunity to educate my kids about MLMs and explain to them why we would not be participating. The school was trying to raise money for new playground equipment, so I donated directly to the school instead. My kids were happy to participate in the fundraiser in this way, and I was happy to avoid Pampered Chef Pam. It was worth every penny. If the school does this fundraiser again, I hope I will have the courage to speak up. I understand that. It does take a lot of courage to go to the authority figures involved with setting up this fundraiser and for explaining that this is something they should not be doing. I think that's great that you used it as a teachable moment for your own kids, though, as to why you won't be supporting the Pampered Chef fundraiser. And whenever I see this kind of thing happening where an MLM rep will go to a local school or some local organization and use that fundraising opportunity to make their own sales, I just think to myself, dang, they've got to be really creative to work up these sales if that's the route they're going. Maybe they feel like they've kind of exhausted all of the home parties and the friends and family contacts and the social media posts, and so now they're having to drum up new ways to sell their products, and so therefore they're going to school fundraisers. It's unclear to me based on your story who set this up. Maybe it was a parent at the school, maybe it was just some random person in the community, maybe it was somebody who works at the school, but regardless, somebody out there saw this as an opportunity. And some people might look at this and see it as a win-win situation. The school raises money and the Pampered Chef person makes sales. But I would be interested to see how much of that money is going towards the school versus how much is going towards that individual rep for those sales commissions. It would not be surprising to me in the least if the individual was benefiting more than the school was. And it just doesn't sit right with me because it's self-serving. Almost like somebody thought, oh, I can make some sales for myself under the guise of being charitable, under the guise of a school fundraiser for new playground equipment. Who wouldn't want to support that? So people place orders through this one particular Pampered Chef rep because they think they're doing something good for their kid's school. It feels a little shady, it feels a little sneaky, and I think you're setting a great example here for any of the listeners that if your kid does bring home some kind of MLM fundraiser pamphlet, I think it's a great opportunity to teach your kids about MLMs, and I also think that's a great opportunity to donate directly to the school. If you want to support the school and whatever cause they're raising money for, your money is going to go farther if you just donate it directly to them versus buying this MLM product in which the school is only getting a small percentage of. I think the way you handled this situation was fantastic, and I appreciate you writing in your story so that we can consider handling it in the same way too, should we find ourselves in the same position. This story says, "Hey Hannah, first I want to thank you for the work you do. Your channel is so eye-opening. It made me realize this story is not my only experience with MLMs, however, this is the one that hurts me the most. Please forgive any mistakes, my first language is not English. I won't be using any real names because the person involved watches your channel, and what I really want to show is how these companies desensitize even the nicest people. Yes, through your videos, she has learned how damaging an MLM can be, but she still chooses to stay in it. We have spoken about it before. For context, I have gone no contact with my mom about 5 years ago. To those who don't know what that feels like, I can only compare it to grief. I was mentally abused, financially oppressed, manipulated with the worst religious views, and some other stuff I'm still working on with therapy. It's the best decision I ever made for my safety and to protect my angel of a husband. But the first few months felt like the aftermath of a funeral. Little by little, the rest of my family took her side because of religious reasons and stopped talking to me. I moved forward with my career and my work started attracting people I used to know when I still lived with my mother. Let me introduce you to Sally, which is not a real name. She met my family maybe a decade ago and has always been aware of the situation. She shared that she disagrees with how terribly my family has treated me. Whenever she comes looking for my services, there is a bit of a venting session, updates on how I'm healing in the process, and so on. It truly felt nice to open up to someone about such a sensitive topic. However, during these visits, the conversation somehow always ends up with Sally introducing her MLM, offering samples of the product, sharing offers, and sharing whenever a new collection launches. I had shared her excitement and purchased a product or two. It's a pretty harmless household product, all in the name of supporting someone's business. But I found your channel just in time and I decided that I wouldn't be joining. To promote her product, Sally has been sending these copy-paste messages, or maybe it's a mass message with things like enjoy 30% off this week's order, or announcing a Christmas sale or an Easter sale. Well, Mother's Day is just around the corner, and I've been receiving a ridiculous amount of, because mom deserves it, here's a discount for Mother's Day presents, and hurry, get mom the best because she's the best type of messages. I usually reply to her messages with an emoji or a sticker so she feels supported and knows that I've read it. But I lost it at, I cannot believe you haven't hopped on this Mother's Day flower sale. Like, really? You can't believe I haven't purchased a present for the person that's been abusing me the most in the world? Huh, interesting. I haven't replied. I don't want to come off as a crybaby over something that may not be a big deal to others. People see me as a tough cookie most of the time. But it seems so out of touch to ask someone who's lost their mother, so what you getting your mom for Mother's Day? I feel like I opened up to someone in vain. It seems like she cares more about selling her product than being considerate of the experience her friends have lived. Leaves me wondering how many people on her message list have lost a parent or have been abused by their parents and get bombarded with messages like these during the Mother's Day and Father's Day rush. Anyway, I don't really know how to close this message. I'm feeling a bit silly. I got triggered over some text messages that maybe mean not much at all. But the lesson I think I learned is don't open up to just anyone. Find therapy, evaluate your friend circle, and don't believe for a second that someone cares about you if every time you vent to them, the conversation ends up revolving around their MLM. I hope you're doing great and enjoying your beautiful baby, sending many blessings to your family and all the love in the world. Thank you, that's very sweet. This story makes me sad because it's involving somebody who you thought you were close to and someone who you could look at as a friend and somebody to vent your most vulnerable moments to. And the fact that when you're receiving these mass messages, it becomes really clear to you that you're just one of the other recipients on the list, and that these are clearly not personalized to everybody's situation, and that she's not being thoughtful or sensitive to your relationship to your mom. And on one hand, I can understand that because it is somewhat of an advertisement after all. Like, we can't expect actual retail stores to be sensitive about promoting their Mother's Day sale just because some people might not have a mom or might not have a relationship with their mom. But in this case, it is different because this is someone you know personally. You see her on a regular basis. You talk about these issues with her regularly. This should be somebody, ideally, that would have your thoughts and emotions in mind. But when it comes to an MLM, there's not really time for that consideration. It's not about being thoughtful or kind or sensitive to everybody. It's not about preserving those friendships. It's about making a sale. It just makes you wonder how valuable this friendship is to this person if she can't even consider not sending you this kind of message. Maybe it is just a bulk message list and you're included in that list and she's not thinking about it. But it goes to show that there is some kind of lack of consideration or personal connection with these messages, and that it's much more about quantity than quality. And I'm sure it does hurt when you receive a message from a friend that you've opened up to about these really vulnerable issues is sending you a message that triggers those exact issues. I'm sure it feels very hurtful and impersonal and like you're being treated more like a money-making opportunity than a friend, and I'm so sorry that happened. And that's all the MLM horror stories I have for you for this video today. Huge thank you to everyone who sent in their story. I'm so appreciative for your vulnerability and your willingness to share it. For anybody who has a story and hasn't shared it yet and wants to, the instructions for how to send that to me are in the description box down below. And thanks again to the Paired app for sponsoring today's video. You can click the link in the description box below. That's going to give you a 7-day free trial plus 25% off Paired Premium. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in my next one real soon.